At just 16 years old, Tamor Trayvon McIntyre, better known as Tay-Key, became one of the most infamous juvenile offenders in recent U.S. history. His story is a chilling mix of violence, rebellion, and viral notoriety that ended with a harsh prison sentence. In 2016, Tay-K and a group of friends broke into a Mansfield, Texas home, intending to rob it. During the chaotic invasion, 21-year-old Ethan Walker was shot and killed, turning the robbery into a deadly crime. Tay-K was quickly identified by law enforcement, but instead of surrendering, he went on the run, sparking a nationwide manhunt that gripped the country. What set this case apart was Tay-K's bold response while evading capture. He recorded and released a song called "The Race." The track detailed his fugitive status and defiance against the police. Its raw, unfiltered lyrics struck a nerve, quickly going viral with millions of views and downloads. The song became a disturbing confession and a dark anthem for a teenage criminal on the run. While on the run, Tay-K was also involved in another murder in San Antonio, Texas, in 2017, when 23-year-old Mark Anthony Saldivar was shot and killed during an attempted robbery. This second case further sealed Tay-K's fate. Tried as an adult despite his youth, Tay-K faced overwhelming evidence including eyewitness testimonies and physical proof linking him to both murders and related crimes. His courtroom battles became a stark collision between youthful recklessness and the unforgiving criminal justice system. In 2019, Tay-K was convicted of the Tarrant County murder of Ethan Walker and sentenced to 55 years in prison. Then, in 2025, he was convicted of the San Antonio murder of Mark Saldivar and sentenced to 80 years in prison, with both sentences running concurrently. Today, Tay-K remains incarcerated, serving decades behind bars. His story is a grim reminder of how quickly a young life can spiral into crime and how the American justice system handles its youngest violent offenders. For true crime enthusiasts, Tay-K's story is more than a viral headline. It's a sobering look at fame, violence, and justice in modern America. 8. Alyssa Bustamante. At just 15 years old, Alyssa Bustamante committed a chilling crime in St. Martins, Missouri on October 21, 2009. She lured her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, into the woods near their homes, where she strangled, stabbed, and slit the girl's throat. Afterward, Bustamante buried Olton's body in a shallow grave she had prepared days earlier. The murder was driven by a disturbing desire to experience what it felt like to kill someone. Bustamante later described the act in her journal as amazing and pretty enjoyable. Initially charged with first-degree murder, Bustamante pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and armed criminal action in 2012. She was sentenced to life in prison for the murder, plus an additional 30 years for the armed criminal action, with the possibility of parole after serving 15 years. Her case drew national attention and sparked debates about juvenile sentencing laws. In 2024, Bustamante became eligible for parole under Missouri's Senate Bill 26, which allowed certain juvenile offenders to seek parole after serving 15 years. However, due to public outcry and legislative changes, including Senate Bill 754, which blocked parole for juveniles convicted of second-degree murder, her parole hearing was conducted in July 2024. The Missouri Board of Parole denied her request for early release. Despite the parole denial, Bustamante remains eligible for parole consideration in 2029. If granted parole, she would still be required to serve the remaining 30-year sentence, making her earliest possible release age 65. Her case continues to be a focal point in discussions about juvenile justice reform and the complexities of sentencing young offenders. 7. Aiden Fucci. At just 14 years old, Aiden Fucci committed a heinous crime in St. Johns County, Florida on May 9, 2021. He fatally stabbed his 13-year-old classmate Tristan Bailey 114 times in a wooded area near their neighborhood. The murder was premeditated. Fucci had previously told friends he wanted to kill someone by taking them to the woods and stabbing them, and had planned to drag a random person into the woods and stab them. Fucci was arrested shortly after the crime. Investigators found surveillance footage showing Fucci walking with Bailey and later returning alone, carrying his shoes. At his home, they discovered bloody clothes and a knife with a missing tip. which was later found embedded in Bailey's scalp, initially charged with second-degree murder. Fucci's charge was upgraded to first-degree murder after further investigation. In February 2023, just before jury selection was set to begin, Fucci pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. On March 24, 2023, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the sentencing, Judge R. Lee Smith described the murder as heinous, atrocious, and cruel, stating that Fucci had no respect for human life. Bailey's family members provided emotional victim impact statements, highlighting the devastating loss of their daughter and sister. Fucci is currently incarcerated at the Sewanee Correctional Institution in Live Oak, Florida. His case has drawn national attention and sparked discussions about juvenile justice and the sentencing of young offenders. 6. Evan Miller. Juvenile arson leading to death. At just 14 years old, Evan Miller's life took a tragic turn. In July 2003, Miller and a 16-year-old accomplice, Colby Smith, were involved in the brutal murder of their 52-year-old neighbor, Cole Cannon, in Moulton, Alabama. The crime began when the boys stole baseball cards from Cannon's trailer. The situation escalated when they returned, beat Cannon with a baseball bat, and set his trailer on fire while he was still inside. Cannon died from blunt force trauma and smoke inhalation. Miller was charged with capital murder and arson. Despite his age, he was tried as an adult and convicted. Under Alabama's mandatory sentencing laws at the time, the judge had no discretion and sentenced Miller to life without the possibility of parole. The case gained national attention and became a pivotal example in the debate over juvenile sentencing. Advocates argued that sentencing a 14-year-old to die in prison was unconstitutional, citing the Eighth Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Miller v. Alabama that mandatory life without parole sentences for juveniles convicted of homicide were unconstitutional. The court emphasized that children are constitutionally different from adults in terms of culpability and potential for change. Following this ruling, Miller's case was revisited. In 2017, a judge resentenced him to life with the possibility of parole, acknowledging the constitutional violation in the original sentencing. Miller's story serves as a poignant reminder of the complexities surrounding juvenile justice and the importance of considering the developmental differences of young offenders in sentencing decisions. 5. Craig Price, juvenile serial killer, sentenced to life imprisonment. At just 13 years old, Craig Price committed his first murder in Warwick, Rhode Island on July 27, 1987. He broke into the home of 27-year-old Rebecca Spencer, stabbing her 58 times. 2 years later, at age 15, Price murdered 39-year-old Joan Heaton and her two young daughters, Jennifer and Melissa, in a brutal attack that left the community in shock. He stabbed Joan 57 times, Jennifer 62 times, and Melissa 30 times, with the violence so extreme that knife handles broke off during the assault. Despite his age, Price was tried as an adult and convicted of 4 counts of murder. Under Rhode Island law at the time, he was sentenced to serve time at the Rhode Island Training School until his 21st birthday, the maximum sentence available for juveniles. However, due to his violent behavior in custody, including multiple assaults and refusals to comply with court-ordered psychiatric evaluations, his case led to changes in state law allowing juveniles to be tried as adults for serious crimes. In 1996, Price was charged with criminal contempt for refusing to undergo a psychological evaluation as ordered by the court. He was convicted and sentenced to an additional 25 years in prison, with 10 years to be served and 15 years suspended. In 2004, Price was transferred to the Union Correctional Institution in Florida due to his violent tendencies. While incarcerated, he has been involved in several violent incidents, including the 2009 stabbing of a prison guard and the 2017 stabbing of a fellow inmate, for which he received a 25-year sentence. As of 2025, Price remains incarcerated at the Union Correctional Institution in Florida. His case continues to be a subject of debate regarding juvenile justice and the treatment of young offenders in the criminal justice system. 4. DeMarquise Elkins, the murder of Antonio Santiago. In March 2013, Brunswick, Georgia, was shaken by a tragic and senseless act that left a community heartbroken. DeMarquise Elkins, then 17 years old, along with his accomplice Dominique Lang, targeted a family in what began as an attempted robbery but ended in devastating loss. The victim was a 13-month-old baby named Antonio Santiago, who was in a stroller with his mother, Sherry West. As West walked with her son on a sunny afternoon, Elkins and Lang approached with the intent to rob her. During the encounter, Elkins fired multiple shots. One of those bullets struck baby Antonio, fatally wounding him. His mother, Sherry, was also injured, but survived the attack. The horrifying crime sent shockwaves through the community. A baby, innocent and defenseless, was caught in the crossfire of a violent robbery. The motive was robbery, but the reckless disregard for human life showed a deep level of brutality. Elkins was quickly arrested and charged with malice murder, felony murder, and other related crimes. Dominique Lang eventually accepted a plea deal, but Elkins went to trial. The prosecution presented a strong case highlighting the deliberate and cruel nature of the shooting. At his sentencing, the victim's mother delivered a powerful impact statement, expressing her grief and pain at the loss of her son. The court sentenced Elkins to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 105 years for other charges. In 2019, questions about Elkins' legal representation during sentencing led the Georgia Supreme Court to order a review, but his conviction and sentence have remained intact. Elkins remains incarcerated, serving a life sentence for one of the most heart-wrenching crimes in recent years. This case remains a sobering reminder of how quickly a moment of violence can destroy innocent lives and tear families apart. 3. Megan Grunwald, accomplice in the murder of Sergeant Corey Ride. In January 2014, a violent crime spree unfolded across Utah County, resulting in the tragic death of Utah County Sheriff Sergeant Corey Ride and the severe wounding of Deputy Greg Sherwood. Megan Grunwald, then 17 years old, was involved as the getaway driver during this harrowing series of events. The incident began when Grunwald and her boyfriend Jose Angel Garcia Jorge were stopped by Sergeant Ride during a routine check. Garcia Jorge, who had an outstanding warrant, shot and killed Ride. The pair then led law enforcement on a 50-mile chase, during which Deputy Sherwood was critically injured. The spree concluded with a shootout in which Garcia Jorge was killed. Grunwald was charged with aggravated murder, attempted murder, aggravated robbery, and other related offenses. Despite her claims that she was coerced and threatened by Garcia Jorge, the court found her criminally responsible as an accomplice. In 2015, she was sentenced to 30 years to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. As of now, Grunwald remains incarcerated, serving her sentence. Her case continues to be a point of discussion regarding juvenile justice and the complexities of culpability in criminal acts involving minors. 2. Brenda Ann Spencer. In January 1979, a shocking act of violence unfolded at Grover Cleveland Elementary School in San Diego, California, leaving 2 dead and several others injured. Brenda Ann Spencer, then 16 years old, carried out the attack by opening fire from her bedroom window using a .22 caliber rifle. The shooting resulted in the deaths of the school's principal and a custodian, while 8 children and a police officer were injured. When asked by reporters why she committed the shooting, Spencer chillingly replied, "I don't like Mondays." This livens up the day. The randomness and cruelty of the act stunned the nation. Police eventually persuaded Spencer to surrender after several hours. Despite her young age and troubled home life, she was charged with 2 counts of murder and multiple counts of attempted murder. Prosecutors tried her as an adult. In court, Spencer pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Diagnosed with epilepsy, depression, and possible brain damage, she expressed remorse in later interviews. 1. Roper v. Simmons, ending the death penalty for juveniles. In 1993, Christopher Simmons, a 17-year-old from Missouri, planned and carried out a brutal murder that would lead to one of the most important legal decisions in American criminal justice history. Simmons had convinced a younger friend to help him break into the home of Shirley Crook, a woman he did not know personally. During the invasion, Simmons strangled and killed Ms. Crook, then threw her body off a bridge into a river. The crime shocked the community due to its cold-blooded nature and Simmons' young age. After being caught, Simmons was tried as an adult and sentenced to death. His case quickly moved through appeals, sparking a debate about whether it was constitutional to execute someone who was a juvenile at the time of their crime. The case reached the U.S. Supreme Court as Roper v. Simmons, 2005. The central question was whether the Eighth Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishment prohibited the execution of offenders under 18 years old at the time of their crime. In a landmark 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Simmons. The justices concluded that juveniles possess less developed brains, greater capacity for change, and are less culpable than adults. Therefore, executing them violated evolving standards of decency. This ruling effectively ended the death penalty for all juvenile offenders across the United States. Simmons' death sentence was overturned, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The decision in Roper v. Simmons remains a crucial turning point in juvenile justice, reflecting a growing understanding of adolescent development and human rights. It has shaped countless cases since, ensuring that young offenders are treated differently than adults in the eyes of the law. Today, Christopher Simmons remains incarcerated, serving a life sentence. His case is a sobering reminder of how one young life and one Supreme Court decision changed the course of American criminal law forever. As we've seen, the path from youth to incarceration is often tragic and complex. The deadliest teens in U.S. prisons in 2025 remind us of the harsh realities behind headlines, lives marked by violence, loss, and consequences that last a lifetime. Their stories serve as warnings and reflections on justice, society, and redemption. If you're fascinated by true crime and want to explore more gripping, real-life cases, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Stay with us as we uncover the most chilling stories from behind bars. Don't miss what's next.